Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran, welcoming you on behalf of Team Springboard led by my boss, Comfort. This is your most inspirational show and the point of convergence for the greatest minds. Your virtual university is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, UMB Bank, with support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. So, last week we had a brilliant conversation about Agenda 2032 under the broad theme of how to get the best out of the year 2022. My guest, Rosie Ebe-Arthur, helped us to appreciate the 6 different pillars of the agenda, and we walked through them in a very interesting way: professional leadership, entrepreneurial leadership, spiritual, financial, socio-political, and health. We reserved the social one for today because we said today we want to go back and look at managing people. So keeping that promise, I have today with us, Rosie Ebe-Arthur, our good friend and HR consultant. Rosie, thanks for agreeing to do a double do.
Thank you very much, Albert.
So today we settle on your favorite area, which is about managing people. Brian Tracy says leadership is the ability to get extraordinary achievement from ordinary people. From the perspective of someone who has seen people, worked with people, seen them grow, is it true?
I believe it is. I believe that the best leaders are the ones who can focus their people on the right agenda, give them the right tools, and then cheer them on from the sidelines. So yes, I would agree with Brian Tracy on that.
Let's look at this year 2022. How different or how unique is it, especially within the context of managing people?
A very interesting topic. And whilst thinking around this, I made a few notes. So let me tackle this probably from a different perspective. So we have a few more knowns in 2022, broad as they may seem. Let me walk through a few of these that have come to mind and why. We are experiencing a pandemic, which we now know is cyclical because it keeps morphing and coming back. Every time we think it's ebbed, it then picks up again. So we know that the pandemic is with us and it may be with us for a while. We have built resilience because of that, because we are in a state of preparedness and in scenario planning all the time. Individuals, businesses, country. Technology has leapfrogged by 3 years, and some even say 5 years over the period. People are more aware of wellness and mental well-being or mental health. Organizations have been forced to build trust with their employees in order to move to remote working, flexible working, etc., so they can still deliver and still have relevance in the environments or communities that they're in. New ways of working have emerged. So almost all our employees may be messing around with some sidekick, some side hustle, as they call it, and people are looking at new ways of working outside the office, hybrid working, etc. So it's like a whole new way of working has emerged out of this. World Economic Forum says that the world or the planet is on fire. That's how they describe it. So ESG, following on the environmental sustainability governance, is on the front burner and organizations are paying attention. Cybersecurity is real. Tight supply chains or crisis of supply chains are being experienced right across the globe. There's the looming debt crisis that countries are dealing with, geopolitical challenges, and the fracturing of what is called social cohesion. So Black Lives Matter, people moving out of where they are, moving into other countries, livelihood failures, loss of jobs, challenges for families, etc. Then we talk about the great resignation, where we are saying that people are leaving their jobs or turning down jobs, and yet there are people looking for jobs. Digitization and automation, building new systems or trying to take on the digital transformation on old systems, old technology. And then you look at all these and you think, sounds like a lot of challenges. But what is there not to like about 2022, I ask? All these things make you think, goodness gracious me. But look at the flip side. It's full of the risk and challenges that we're talking and realizing and dealing with are also giving us opportunity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I am completely excited about what 2022 presents to us, because despite all these things that I've mentioned, it is driving innovation. It is driving resilience. It has opened the door to opportunity. And we are building an entrepreneurial spirit in a way that never has happened in our time. So let's go for it. Let's just go for it.
Interesting. So your knowns have two things in the mixed pot. If you describe 2022 in two different halves or two different portions, on one part is what is scary, but is known, and then the other part is what is the opportunity, and they reside in the same pot. It would seem to align with the thought that in the midst of every crisis is the hidden opportunity.
Exactly.
Right. What should all this that you describe mean for organizations, especially as they plan their human capital? What will all this mean for them?
Leadership has to change.
What does it mean?
When I say leadership has to change, we now have employees who are saying no. I want you to recognize work-life balance, my work-life balance. I want you to recognize my mental well-being. I want you to give room or make room for me to learn and to develop, and I want you to guide me in these areas. I want leadership that role model what they say. I want operational efficiencies that align to your values. I'm looking for purposeful leadership. So you cannot tell me one thing and do the other. I want a compensation structure that reflects the values and the purpose or your mission that you're espousing. So leaders are now in a bit of a, or should I say, organizations are in a bit of a tight spot where they are having to think about, it is now the employee's world. And you may think, oh, that's not here yet. No, it is here. Because critical skills and specialist skills have become key to delivering on strategy. So we're finding that organizations need leaders with high emotional intelligence, servant leaders, leaders who are prepared to listen, and leaders who bring human into the workplace. So you want me to do the work for you? You need to understand where I am. You need to understand my challenges. And you need to give me that flexibility so that I can deliver to you. But life is so important to me now because so many have lost theirs and it's become real to me. So I need to get that balance. And you as an organization need to help me there. And I have direct access to learning, but I still want you to guide me.
Let me explore these thoughts a bit more, because it almost seems like a contradiction when you talk about the fact that there is the great resignation and there's so much conversation about it. I mean, people just walking away from jobs, and at the same time, so many people clamoring for jobs. Is that not almost like a contradiction? And then you say that in a world in which so many people are queued up looking for jobs, it's actually an employee's world, because the employee is calling the shots and saying, this is the kind of environment I want to work in. Yeah. Somebody will say, listen, if they don't want a job, why don't you just remove them and bring others who are queuing on the streets looking for jobs? Is that the kind of thinking that people should have?
When we talk about the Great Resignation,
right,
and you look at the information and you read a little around it, you find that, yes, people are working away from some lower skilled jobs. Specialism, highly skilled, etc., are still critical. So we're looking for people who can actually sometimes do the work of more than one person because of their high knowledge base or acumen. So yes, people are walking away from certain jobs, or people are asking for different, but there have been so many other new jobs that have come into the marketplace. And so what we're seeing is that certain jobs are losing value and other jobs are driving value. So now you cannot achieve without you can't just sit back and say, oh, I'm an HR professional. No, we want to know whether you can deal with, how do you manage information? How do you get to data? How do you manipulate data? How do you use that to make decisions? How do you understand the maths of human capital? So we're now asking for more. And so how aware are we of these changes? How aware are organizations of these changes? And how are individuals and organizations preparing themselves to face these changes?
There's something I've been trying to explore since the year began, and it's based on a conversation that one of our resource persons from Yale University several years ago espoused when he came to Ghana for the Festival of Ideas, which you participated in last year. And this was Vikram Mashramani, who talked about, he had written a book called The Generalist Advantage. And at the time, he was propounding a theory that the world was gravitating towards the point where we needed generalists, people who do different things rather than specialists. And he actually argued bravely that to be a specialist was a disadvantage. Rosie, from what you describe now, where jobs are becoming less and less relevant in some areas, and then there's a greater need for specialized skills to deliver the mandate that organizations have, will you vote for specialists or generalists?
I think I would like to engage with people who have an understanding contextually. Call it a generalist if you like. And then I would want that additional piece, that differentiator. So if you look at the case of the Panama Papers, when they looked through and said so many people had money elsewhere, etc., that search wasn't done by humans. It was done by artificial intelligence. AI was used to go through all the copious data. So if I have somebody who's in the legal profession who cannot understand or wrap their head around that and the impact and how important technology is as an enabler, then it's going to be a challenge for me in my organization. So I'm looking for people who are aware of the change around them and can take advantage of it. So you will have to be specialized in some areas in order to move quickly and to drive the change I want to see and to help me to achieve my strategic goals.
My guest the last time described such people as generalized specialists. Would you subscribe to that description?
Yes, sir.
And I find it very interesting that the thoughts that you share seem to be driving in that direction, that the person, yes, can be a petroleum lawyer, a specialist in, let's say, petrochemical industry, but at the same time must also understand data and its interpretation. Finance. It's
commodities.
It's quite an interesting
opportunity.
Development.
Interesting opportunity.
Where is
transferable skills.
Right.
Transferable skills. It means that it is never enough. It means what I know now, what else can I add to it in order to drive the value, in order to ensure that I'm successful. So I can't sit just on what got me here, because it's not going to get me there.
In all this, the management of HR, traditional HR, it would seem that it's changed from what it used to be or what you've known over the years. What must today's HR practitioner, or by extension, maybe HR is no longer the preserve of the HR practitioner from what you are describing. Maybe now it's a shared function that everyone is participating in. Help us to understand the management of people and the HR function as it situates in the world you describe today.
Yeah. Gone are the days of hiring, filing, and firing. HR was such an administrative role in organizations, and you could always see that HR person always ready with policy to block you. But now we talk about people management. And again, we see a shift where supervisors and line managers have taken and are taking responsibility for the resources, human, that they need to deliver on their goals, on their budgets, etc. So HR has shifted into advisory, and we're using technology to deliver on quite a number of the administrative areas. Not all organizations are there at the same time, but we see the trajectory. So we find that now we're looking to HR for advice. We're looking to HR as a trusted advisor, both for employees and the employer. HR is creating that bridge that helps us to understand the employee mindset and helps organizations to ensure that the environment is such that employees can thrive. Because when you have engaged employees, the customer benefits. And that's what drives the success of your business. So HR has had to give away some of that administrative safety space. And now when we look to recruit HR, we're looking at people who can sell HR capabilities, convince people about the work HR does and brings to the business. So you look at marketers, you look at people from hospitality, you look at psychologists, you look at engineers, you look at mathematicians, because HR is now looking at numbers. How do we impact the bottom line? What does all this HR speak mean in cedis, in dollars, in kwacha, whatever we're doing? Is like, don't just talk to me about fuzzy HR. How can I differentiate myself? So there is that challenge and that stretch on HR. So HR has also had to move to say, how do I drive decisions using the data I have? Because HR holds a lot of data. If you'd compare it to a data lake, everything is in the black box. What are we doing with it? How are we helping to say we have the right competencies, we have the right people, and we can face 10 years from now as an organization?
So the HR has changed. It's no longer that student who went to school of admin and read HR, but there's competition from...
No, we're under stress.
All
we're
right.
under stress to deliver business solutions.
So you're saying that, technically, you're saying that the person who read law, the person who read maths, is now applying for the HR function and delivering on the mandate because they are the skills, their skills are as required as
and
those
as
of
transferable.
The wow. Let's go to another big issue that has transformed the HR landscape in a huge way, and that is virtualization. So the average person now, or the average firm now has, I mean, some of the firms that we deal with have had their staff at home since March of 2020, and nobody goes to the office now. How big is virtualization, and how much has it transformed the landscape?
And the follow-on question would be, how do we get them back to the offices? Or do we need to get them back to the offices?
Or should we even
get them back to the offices? What are the savings from hybrid working? What are the costs that organizations face? How can we drive a culture that is virtual but engaging? And how do we ensure that employees are productive when virtual? What are the roles that have to be virtual, and what roles have to be in office, on site, in person? There are lots of questions at the moment, and I don't think there's a single right answer. If you work in the services industry, for instance, let's say you're a consultant, you want your guys in the office. You need the water cooler engagement. You need to drive the excitement. You need to be able to engage in person. But if you're in sales, you may not need to have them in the office. Having said that, customers and clients differ. There's some that won't talk to you, they can't see you. They want eyeball. They build trust based on that. They're used to that. They don't want to change. There are others who prefer to stay online, out of sight, but do business well. So each organization needs to look within itself, restructure and look at what are the roles that are better delivered in person. My background is in banking. My teller is not at home. They're in the office. They've been at the front line even in the face of COVID. However, there is a shift to alternative banking channels. So people don't need to come into the branch. How am I looking at that? How is that reducing my cost? How am I driving the efficiency for my customers and my clients? How am I educating them to use alternate channels, etc.? So I don't think there's a one size fits all, but there's a huge space where we need to really look within ourselves and determine. I was very amused when I was told once that the team that look after the filing system, etc., were working from home. And I was wondering, have they taken the files home? What has happened here? They're like, no, but they're working remotely. I'm like, come on, give me a break. So
filing?
Exactly. If we're still using the old form of filing. But again, that challenge brings innovation and opportunity. So do we now move our filing system online? Is this the reason? Because companies have looked at the cost of that and have balked at it and said, no, we're not going to do that. But now we're being forced to do that. So again, challenge, opportunity, innovation.
The big question will be, even in terms of going forward, what works for you? Because what must have been forced on you in the beginning could be the game changer for your business going forward. And so your attempt to go back to what used to be may, in essence, be killing your business. This is Springboard, your virtual university, and this conversation is about managing people. My guest is Rosie Ebe-Arthur, the #1 HR consultant. Actually, she told me that, and I believe her. And she's helping us to understand the dynamics of the world of work in which we operate, especially from the perspective of managing people. One of the most radical things she said is that the HR function has moved from the administrative outlook of hiring, filing, and firing to doing much more analysis about value chains and about delivery of the expected outcomes and the math of it, to the extent that now even non-traditional HR people are getting seriously considered for HR jobs. And that is a very interesting proposition for the traditional HR person who believes that this is their preserve. When we come back from this break, we'll be looking a bit more about how do you manage the various relationships in your life and the various people above you, at your level, and below your level, to ensure that your sailing is smooth. And I will ask her to end by telling us 5 predictions, or at least 3, for this year in the area of managing people. Please don't go away.
In a world where you can be anything, who will you become? When you can go anywhere and never be alone, how far will you go? When your voice can reach every ear in the world, who will you inspire? When your money can travel faster and further, who will it reach? When you can tell a story in every language, which one will you tell? When you don't need permission to turn your dreams into reality, you go for it. Whatever it is, wherever it is, go. And when you think you've reached your limit, we'll keep you going. Let's go.
There once was a man who had it all. He had skill, he had charisma. He was loved by all, but above all, he knew the importance of helping others, lifting others up. He knew the importance of giving other people an advantage so that they too would use that advantage to help others. All you need is that advantage that sets you apart from the rest. And when you discover that advantage, life's challenges don't seem so daunting anymore. That's where we come in. Enterprise, your advantage.
UMB was established in 1972 as the premier bank for the corporate and private sector in Ghana. From our very beginning, as the only Ghanaian bank serving all categories of businesses, we set a standard for excellence and innovation. Over the past 45 years, we've built a financially healthy and strong bank, demonstrated our commitment to our customers and to growing businesses, and exhibited originality and innovation at every turn. At UMB, our focus is built around people, service, products and technology. These are the key to our present success and our future triumphs. At UMB, we're poised to make a difference not only with our customers, but also in the banking industry. We invite you to share in our future. Our future starts now with you.
Welcome back to Springboard of Virtual University, brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, the enterprise group UMB Bank, with support from our media friends, the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. Last week, you remember that we had a discussion about Agenda 2032, and today we are pushing on to managing people, all in our quest to get the very best out of the year 2022. Our guest has been Rosie Ebe-Arthur, HR consultant. And just to remind you that you can find this conversation in the graphic business on page 18. Both editions will feature this conversation. Get it, look through it, bookmark your interesting points, and look out for the recommendations that she will give at the end of today's conversation. Rosie, we ended the first part on the conversation about virtualization. So the person that you are supervising, I remember seeing a cartoon that says, I do my best when I see the boss passing. And it was about somebody who was watching football on the computer. And when you saw the boss passing, just change screen and then try to pretend they were doing some very serious work. How do we manage a workforce that is now working from home? They are playing some AFCON and the person is at home. How do you manage people who are working from home and ensure that organizational goals and aspirations and mandates are fulfilled from the manager's point of view?
It's a tough role for the managers, and Albert, we mustn't take things for granted when it comes to the world of the virtual world. Because, like you said, we're used to seeing people checking what they're doing, etc. And suddenly, these people are not there, and we're supposed to trust them to deliver. I believe that organizations must take this seriously and give some training and tips and other supporting tools to managers to help them to engage the workforce. So if you're a manager and you're buying your own data and paying your own phone bills, for instance, it's quite challenging with the loss of livelihoods, etc., to be calling your team up, say, every other day or every day to have a conversation around output. Our KPIs have now become critical, and it starts off from, have you got a believable vision or strategy? And is your mission or purpose clear to employees? Because when they connect into that and they're committed to it, they are able to go the extra mile. They just feel alive with what you're doing. So you're going to have to communicate more as a manager, as a leader, as a supervisor, into a void. Because you can have a Zoom meeting and all the cameras are off. You just don't know what they're doing. So your focus should be on what is the output. Because there's somebody there who needs to pick up their child at 2 o'clock from school. And they're having to go and do that. And you've got to bear that in mind. They may be taking your call in the car. Is their output delivering on the KPI? As a manager, how are you going to communicate in a way that drives collaboration, respect from your team? And how can you continue to work with them to develop and deliver? So there's a whole gap there, which is a part of these new ways of working. So how do we build that skill in our managers and supervisors so they focus on the output and then become considerate human beings? Don't call your employee at 11 o'clock because you've suddenly come across an email that you should have dealt with, and suddenly you are panic stations and you're like, Rosie, I was expecting this, but can we now do it now? I need to have a conversation. Please, Rosie may have her mother living with her and needs to care for her, is exhausted, and so is not open to a conversation at that time. Do you then lose your temper with her? Or should you have managed yourself better as well? We need to help our managers in this area so that our KPIs are discussed, the goals that we set are agreed, and employees know that we trust them to deliver on that. But let's not just leave it at that. Let's also engage employees so that they know what is expected of them, they believe in the purpose and what you're trying to achieve, and give their all to it as well. Let's make sure that we are paying attention to their well-being, their mental state, and that we're helping them where we can in dealing with the challenges that have evolved because of the pandemic we've been through.
Let me explore the issue of well-being and the mental well-being a bit more. I mean, research seems to suggest that the isolation, working alone, and in several instances, working longer hours than they would in person, and the lack of that engagement that reduces the tension has led to a spiking in mental health issues among many employees. And how big and important is this conversation about mental health in the light of the pandemic and people's losing of livelihoods, people losing loved ones, dealing with issues they've not been familiar with over the years? Huge impact on individuals, on organizations, and by inference, on countries or nations, and what we seek to achieve. So we all went into it and found that we had to almost prove to everybody else that we were working. And there were no boundaries. And we ourselves felt that because we had to prove we were working, we just stayed with it. And we didn't put any guardrails around that. You'd wake up and literally roll onto your laptop and start work, immediately start answering emails. But there's a structure to it. And we all suffered either from burnout or were overwhelmed with work, etc. Again, this is where mentoring comes into play. This is where
coaching and direct access to learning. It's a whole new world. Don't take it for granted. After I think that I was now working, I probably was sleeping maybe 2 or 3 hours during that period, because you were dealing with your KPIs that you had to deliver on. And then you were dealing with employees who didn't know what to do and were frightened, were scared. And then you were dealing with family and trying to protect your family as well. But then we had to get to a point, I had to get to a point where I'd step back and say, these are my working hours. I do not want to work from my bedroom. I want to remove myself from my laptop at a certain time. I want to exercise and clear my mind at a certain time. I want to then also be able to influence, so that as an organization, we create these spaces for employees. So we're having virtual exercise sessions, we're having online parties. At a point, I remember in my team, we said, these our children have seen us on the laptop all the time, very stressed, etc. So I remember in my team, we had a family party. So we had it on Zoom so that all our children, our pets, everybody was on the call. We said that day everybody should wear white top and jeans, and we were there. We had quizzes, we played music, we danced, just so that we would demystify that whole area. So it's mental health, and then you need to make sure that you do have online a trusted helper, someone who's qualified, psychologists, counselors, etc., so that employees can dial that number, call that person, video call that person. You would see that telemedicine really shifted up during the pandemic. Create that opportunity so that when I feel overwhelmed, I know there's someone I can reach out to. Also, not just flyers, but engagement sessions, workshops. At a point, I remember we went through, when you had COVID, you became ostracized. So had sessions where people who had COVID, especially in the earlier time, could talk about their experience, could talk about how they got reintegrated back to work. So again, demystify. Create that opportunity for people to speak out and say how they feel, so that it reduces the panic, reduces the strain on mental health, and try and normalize it so that you don't feel that if I say that I'm really stressed, I'm frightened, then people look at you funny. No, leaders should say it.
You made a point. I have learned something from you today, because you've observed it, you understand it, but you've never been able to put words to it in the way that you've done. What you've helped me to appreciate today, Rosie, is that the increasing number of people who are burnt out and who voice it out is a result of they being plunged into something that they assume they can respond to by just working from home, but they are dealing with loads of challenges that they didn't anticipate, and they've not been able to draw the boundaries, and therefore find themselves working day and night and not even knowing that they are working way beyond their regular scope. And the system does not make it friendly to say, I am struggling, I'm burnt out, and I need help.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Let's swing to the other side. How does the employee ensure? We've talked about what the manager must do, and the Zoom party is a big idea. White top and jeans, Charlie with the children and the pets and everything. That's a really good idea. How do we get it from the employee's side? Because you will find people who are really working and probably pushing themselves beyond the limits, but there are also people who are struggling to discipline themselves in an environment where nobody is watching you. How does the employee ensure that they are delivering on what they are employed to do in an environment where you could sleep if you chose to?
Distractions, many of those. Our phones. I think I made a point on something else. I'm just trying to see if I can find it. About how much time...
Is this a notebook insured?
Hey, it is so. This notebook.
No, yeah, look. Charlie, I'm telling you, if somebody got... I just on the lighter side, I recall when I interviewed Kweku Beduado, who is now CEO of Stanchart South Africa.
Yes.
and he talked about the day he entered Stanchart, Ghana, and went to interview Vikram.
Yes.
Vishnu Mohan, who was a CEO then, and asked him a question about how does he become CEO, and he said the thoughts that Vishnu gave him, he wrote them in his notebook, and he gave us a photocopy of the page.
And he shared it with me.
Yes.
Because I asked him, and I wanted to know what he learned, and he was able to share that with me.
He was able to photocopy the exact page. I still have it. The page that he wrote the notes in.
And you said he's CEO where? Where is he now?
He became CEO in Ghana 10 years after that conversation, and then went on to become CEO in South Africa.
Deliberateness, leaders. Somebody who could write that at the time and share it. Not keep it to himself.
Right.
But help others with it. Being deliberate.
Interesting.
So I was looking for this point on how smartphones, I read something and I just made a point and said smartphone users unlock their phones 150 times a day and spend an average of 3 hours, 15 minutes on their phones. Millennials in particular, they put this down at 5.7 hours a day. This is a major distraction. Put your phones away for at least 2 to 3 hours a day and focus on the payoff of that action. That made me think and make that note because I thought the distractions are so many. And you know when you don't feel like doing some work, if you were in the office, you probably go to the water cooler, speak to a friend, an idea will pop up, or your manager will come up, you speak to him, you get encouraged. You're now at home. This job, this particular project, you're not really keen on. You start thinking, maybe I should drink some Sprite. Let me go to the fridge. Oh, let me go and check if my daughter's okay in her room. You do anything but. Try and structure your day so that you know that I'm going to sit down for an hour, but I'm going to take a 10-minute break. Or I'm going to sit down for 2 hours. So again, there's thinking and planning around this. Try and look at your own cycle and say, am I a morning person or an afternoon person? Or do I like working in the evening? If I waste my morning, I struggle to catch up in the afternoon. So that's why I looked at myself and thought, if I walk 10 kilometers in the morning, I'm actually exhausted for most of the morning. So let me cut that down now to 5. So my brain is still firing because I'm a morning person. You need to look at your own cycle. When should I have meetings? When should I hold meetings? So that you don't get overwhelmed and so you don't get too distracted. And then let's be honest with ourselves. If you're spending your most productive hours on your side hustle and busy posting on your Instagram page on the dresses you're making and selling, be honest with yourself and deliver what you have signed up to deliver to your employer. We can't force you, but I would always say that I always go with the Pareto rule. If 20% of my employees are firing and doing the right thing, I'm not going to spend energy on the 80. So by your own moral compass, plan to deliver to your employer. And when you have a challenge, raise it. If you feel very distracted, maybe you need to look at the project you're working on. Maybe you need to go back to your manager for clarity, for support. Maybe you need to work with someone different. Use every tool in your toolkit to change that lag that you're feeling. Or maybe it's just where you're sitting to do your work. Maybe like me, you shouldn't be in the bedroom because the bed looks so inviting. Maybe you should be seated at the dining table. The organizations that focused on getting like desks and the right chairs, etc. for their employees. EY did that, for instance. So they would look at your home and say, you need an ergonometric chair, which means that you sit properly. Because it's okay for those of us who live in a place where you've got a place to sit. There were people that I knew who had to lie in their bed to work, this remote working thing. There were people who were sitting at their children's desks to write, and it was creating...
Might be okay for a month, but for 6 months creates health issues.
Don't talk to that person about remote working. Globally, it said that 3.6 billion people don't have access to internet connectivity. You're talking to them about remote working. What are you talking about? Here in Ghana, how does it look like for us? If you go to Nigeria, power outage, etc., you want his or her father to switch on the generator so they can have your meeting. So let's think about it from that way and understand how the impact is having on us, individuals, and on the delivery to organizations.
Let's come to the big point I've been waiting for quite a while. If someone were listening and said, okay, this show is about how to get the best out of the year 2022, and the focus is on managing people. There are people above you, there are people below you, there are people around you, but what would be your top recommendations for anyone who wants to sit back in December and say, whoa, this has been a great year? What would you recommend for anyone listening who wants to make the most out of this year?
I'm thinking about this, and I've been playing with an acronym in my mind to say,
I'm not surprised.
How do I make it easy to communicate to people that we can do this? And I thought of the word calm, CALM. Our choices, who we are today, what we achieve, what our tomorrow is a sum of our choices. Our life is a sum of our choices. What turn do you take? What opportunity do you take? How do you set yourself up for an opportunity? So our choices are critical. Adaptability and learning, the A and the L. So when you look at it, what resilience am I building? How adaptable am I? What is my reaction to challenges? Do I run towards the Goliath or do I run away from the challenges? What am I learning? How am I upskilling myself? What is my intellectual curiosity? How am I making sure that I am challenging the status quo around me? When I think about that, then I go to what is my moral compass? What are my values? Because those are the swim lanes within which I operate. That is what is guiding me. That is what helps me making the decisions I make. That is what makes me say no to certain things that I feel that is not my ethos. Those are not my ethics. This is not all right with me. So the choices we make is a C. Our adaptability
Is the A?
Is the A. Learning
Is the L?
Be a learning machine. Wake up every morning striving to know more than you did when you woke up that morning. That's the L. And the M is our morals. We translate into our values, and which help us in our decision making and in our choices. So it comes full circle. So I'd say, be calm. We got this, 2022.
Next time you hear the word calm, do not make a mistake. It's not just about being cool. It's about knowing that you must make the right choices. You must be adaptable. You must be a learning machine. And your morals, that moral compass, must be fully in place in making those critical decisions you want to make in the year 2022. And if you do that by December, you will be very fine. Let me give you, Rosie, a summary of the 12 things I've learned from you in this second session. And I must say it's been a beautiful conversation with our listeners and our viewers. So if you are ready, let's have the 12 lessons from Rosie in the discussion about managing people. Provide them with the requisite tools and share them from the sidelines. Number 2 is one of my favorites about the 2022 mixed pot. She says, the year is unique with a few knowns, notably that the pandemic is cyclical, we've built resilience, technology is at the forefront, there are mental well-being issues, and organizations have had to build trust with their employees and find new ways of working. She says the World Economic Forum says that the world is on fire or the workplace is on fire. Is it the workplace or the world?
The planet is on
The
fire.
planet is on fire, and it comes with debt crisis, supply chain disruptions, fracturing of social cohesion, and the big or the great resignation. How do you marry great resignation and people looking for jobs? She says, while that may be a big issue on one hand, on the flip side is loads of opportunity, loads of innovation, and the perfect grounds for entrepreneurship. Number 3, organizational leadership changes. She says that there is more recognition for work-life balance, mental well-being, the need for employees to develop themselves, and leaders are being asked to set personal examples that are aligned with the values of the firm. Number 4, it's an employee's world. She says employees are asking questions they didn't used to ask before and are demanding that compensation systems align with what the company or organization professes. She says that there's a need for top-level skilled people to navigate the big points that organizations are dealing with, and for that reason, it is an employee's world. Number 5 is about the specialist versus the generalist. She says that she would like to engage someone who has a general overview of the workplace and the various things that are required, but at the same time is a specialist and an authority in the field that he prefers to hold the responsibility or position in. The 6th one is about the changing jobs dynamic. She says some jobs are getting more and more important, relevant, valued, while some are losing ground or changing in outlook. She mentions that today's HR function in particular is not about just doing HR as it's known, but about interpreting data and the math of managing people. As a result of that, we come to point number 7 that says today's HR practitioner is not a typical HR person who went to learn HR at the university, but the person who knows how to deliver at all points in the value chain the results that are required. And for that reason, you find much more that people with different academic backgrounds are coming into the HR field. Number 8 is about virtualization and hybrid working. She's seeing that there are loads of questions that are being asked, and at the end of the day, the biggest question is whether companies should go back to what they used to do before or re-engineer their working model to get the optimum results out of either hybrid working or virtual only or in-person, depending on industry by industry, the conversation that takes place. The number 9 is about getting results from your virtual staff. She says that managing people is delivering results, and considering the era in which you live, make your KPIs clear and focus more on collaboration, trust, and respect, and less on micromanaging timelines and activities minute by minute. That's not how to get the results. Number 10 is about virtual work and mental health. She's saying that there's been a huge impact on the mental health of individuals, of companies, and of nations because this pandemic came and we plunged into virtual work without the requisite preparation, and many people found themselves having been stripped of the comfort of working in an environment and getting the support that they get, and sometimes working way beyond the working hours with the stresses that come with it. And therefore, it's time to take an even more serious look at mental health. And the recommendation is that most organizations will need to have, a skilled, qualified psychologist or HR person or counselor or psychologist on hand to support staff. So that is the recommendation. Companies must get a qualified counselor or psychologist supporting the staff on call at various times. Number 11 is how to deliver results as a virtual employee. And she's saying that employees must understand themselves and how they perform best and design their work around that. She says she's a morning person, and I'm sure she loves her breakfast. I didn't ask her that one. But don't prioritize your side hustle over your main job, and be true to yourself, the moral compass, and deliver on the results you are paid to deliver. The last one, number 12, recommendation for the year 2022 is stay calm. And that calm is not the calm before the storm. It is choices, adaptability, learning, and very importantly, back to that moral compass that drives all your decisions. Rosie, what can I say? A big thank you to you for spending 2 episodes with us to help us navigate our way in the year 2022. What will be your closing thoughts?
Be deliberate, Albert, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Plan well. Plan for the decade. Trust yourself and give your very best to this plan, knowing that it may not go in a straight line, but build the flexibility in it. You will succeed. And the learning.
Let's come together in December and review what we said in January, February, and see how well some of these thoughts have been manifested in the world of work and possibly in the plans and lives of individuals. I mean, listeners and viewers, maybe share your own experience with us on social media, your learnings. Which of these points is your favorite, and how is it helping you as you plan for the year and even more importantly, for the decade? Rosie, thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Albert.
So that does it for our show for today. My name is Albert Okran, thanking you on behalf of MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, UMB Bank, the Multimedia Group, and the Graphic Communications Group, and saying, God bless you, God bless you, and God bless you. We are out.